The universe held its breath. In the endless black between stars, something stirred. Not wind. There was no air to carry it. Not sound. Space swallowed all cries. But something far more dangerous than either. Purpose. The hegemony fleet moved. Like a school of metallic fish through the void. 17 ships, each one the size of a small moon. Their hulls gleamed with an otherworldly blue light that pulsed in perfect rhythm, as if the fleet itself had a heartbeat. Admiral Zektar floated in the command chamber of the flagship, Dominion's Edge. His forearms worked the control interfaces, with practiced ease while his 6 eyes monitored dozens of displays. The hegemony had conquered 47 worlds in the past century. 47 civilizations had knelt before their might. Today would make it 48. "Status report," Zektar commanded, his voice echoing through the chamber with the authority of someone who had never known defeat. "Scanning the target system now, Admiral," replied his tactical officer, a younger hegemony warrior whose scales still held the bright green of inexperience. 1 star, 8 planets. The 3rd planet shows signs of an emerging civilization. How emerging? They've achieved basic spaceflight, sir. Crude chemical rockets, some orbital installations. Nothing that could threaten us. Zektar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Perfect. Not so primitive that conquest would be boring, but not advanced enough to pose any real challenge. His fleet could handle this with minimal effort, maybe even let the junior officers get some practice. Any defensive installations? Scanning. Yes, sir. I'm detecting several structures in orbit around the 3rd planet. They appear to be... The tactical officer paused, his scales shifting to a puzzled yellow. Sir, I'm not sure what to make of these readings. Explain. The structures are large, Admiral. Very large. And they're not stationary. They're moving in patrol patterns around the planet. Zektar's interest sharpened. In all his campaigns, only 3 species had managed to build truly formidable, space-based defenses. 2 of them had still fallen within a day. The third had required orbital bombardment of their entire homeworld. Show me. The main display shimmered, then resolved into an image of the blue-green planet below. Around it, like ancient guardians, moved massive structures. They were unlike anything in Zektar's extensive database of known military technologies. What do you make of them, Admiral? Zektar studied the display, his tactical mind analyzing what he saw. The structures were indeed massive, easily 1 kilometer long each. Their design was angular, brutal, focused entirely on function over form. Weapons bristled from every surface like the spines of some cosmic predator. But what struck him most was how they moved, not with the elegant grace of hegemony ships which flowed through space like living things. These moved with purpose, with determination, like they were hunting. "They call them battleships," said a new voice. Every warrior in the command chamber spun toward the sound. In the center of the room, where nothing had been moments before, stood a figure none of them recognized. It was tall, bipedal, with pale skin and strange hair growing from the top of its head. Most unsettling of all, it had only 2 eyes, but those eyes held an intelligence that made Zektar's combat instincts scream warnings. "Who are you?" Zektar demanded, his 4 hands moving to his weapons. "How did you get aboard my ship?" The figure smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both friendly and terrifying. "I'm what they call a human, and as for how I got here..." The smile widened. "Let's just say your shields aren't as good as you think they are." "Impossible. Our technology is..." "Superior to everyone you've met so far," the human interrupted. "I know. We've been watching your little conquest tour for quite some time. 47 worlds, wasn't it? Impressive. Brutal, but impressive." Zektar's tactical officer finally found his voice. "Sir, all security scans show the chamber is empty. There's no one there." The human glanced at the tactical officer with what might have been amusement. "Your sensors are looking for life as you understand it. Biological signatures, energy patterns, mass displacement. But you're not looking for what I actually am." "And what are you?" "A warning," the human said simply. "Turn your fleet around. Leave this system. Find some other species to terrorize. Trust me, you don't want to discover what happens when humans decide you're a threat. Zektar's mandibles clicked with laughter. You expect me to fear one world, one species? We are the hegemony. We have swept across the galaxy for 1,000 years. Your pathetic little ships are no match for... Our pathetic little ships, the human said quietly, weren't built to match yours. The display behind Zektar changed without anyone touching the controls. Now it showed detailed scans of the human battleships, and what those scans revealed made several warriors step back in shock. They were built to kill them. The command chamber fell silent except for the hum of machinery. On the display, the true nature of the human defensive fleet became clear. These weren't just warships. They were predators, designed by a species that had spent millennia learning how to destroy things that were bigger, stronger, and more advanced than they were. Last chance, the human said. Turn around. Zektar straightened to his full height, his forearms spreading wide in a gesture of dismissal. We are the hegemony. We do not retreat. We do not negotiate. We conquer. The human nodded slowly, as if he had expected this answer. I really hoped you'd say that. Then he was gone, leaving behind only the faint scent of ozone and the terrible certainty that everything was about to change. Admiral, the tactical officer whispered, his scales now a pale, frightened white. Should we perhaps reconsider our approach? Zektar looked at the display where the human battleships continued their patient, deadly dance around their homeworld. For just a moment, something that might have been doubt flickered in his eyes. Then his pride reasserted itself. All ships, he commanded. Battle formation. We attack at dawn. In the depths of space, the battleships seemed to sense the decision. Their movement changed, becoming more focused, more purposeful, like wolves that had just caught the scent of prey, or perhaps like prey that had just realized they were being hunted. Chapter 1. First Contact Captain. Sarah Chen had seen her share of impossible things in her 20-year career with Earth's defense fleet. She'd watched asteroids the size of cities get vaporized by focused particle beams. She'd seen ships phase through solid matter using dimensional drives that shouldn't exist according to the physics textbooks. She'd even witnessed the birth of a star during the Deep Space Survey missions. But she'd never seen 17 alien battleships drop out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation just outside Earth's defensive perimeter. Captain, Lieutenant, Commander Rodriguez called from the tactical station aboard the EDF Indomitable. I'm reading massive energy signatures across the board. These ships... Ma'am, they're huge. Sarah stood on the bridge of her battleship, hands clasped behind her back as she studied the main display. The alien vessels were beautiful in their own way, sleek, organic-looking, like someone had grown them rather than built them. They moved with an elegance that human ships, for all their technological advances, had never quite achieved. They were also bristling with enough firepower to crack a continent. Size comparison? She asked. Each one is approximately 15 times the mass of Indomitable, Captain. If they're typical battleships, they likely carry anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 crew members. Sarah did the math quickly. 17 ships times an average of 7,000 crew each. They were looking at roughly 120,000 enemy combatants, all of them presumably trained for conquest. Earth's entire defense fleet consisted of 12 battleships with crews of 800 each. Not good odds by any measure. Any attempt at communication? Negative, Captain. They're just sitting there, waiting. Sarah had commanded the Indomitable for 3 years, ever since the completion of Earth's battleship program. The ships were humanity's answer to the growing awareness that they weren't alone in the universe, and that their neighbors might not be friendly. Each battleship was a kilometer-long testament to human ingenuity, packed with weapon systems that pushed the boundaries of known physics. But looking at the alien fleet, Sarah wondered if human ingenuity would be enough. Ma'am, Communications Officer Park spoke up from her station. I'm receiving a transmission from Fleet Command. Admiral Harrison wants to speak with all battleship captains immediately. Put it through. The main display shifted to show Admiral Marcus Harrison, a gray-haired man whose calm demeanor had seen Earth through 3 different first contact scenarios. None of them had involved hostile fleets, but his expression suggested he was adapting quickly. Captains. Harrison's voice filled the bridge. By now you've all seen our visitors. Analysis suggests they're from the same species that's been systematically conquering systems in this sector for the past several decades. They call themselves the hegemony. Sarah felt her stomach drop. She'd read the reports from the deep space monitoring stations. Entire civilizations simply vanishing, their worlds left stripped and lifeless. Billions of beings dead or enslaved. Their standard operating procedure, Harrison continued, is to demand unconditional surrender, followed by the enslavement or elimination of the native population. We've received no communication from them yet, but based on their past behavior, we can expect contact within the next few hours. Captain Williams of the Defiant spoke, up from another ship. Sir, what are our orders? Harrison's expression didn't change, but Sarah caught something in his eyes, a hardness that spoke of decisions already made. As of this moment, all 12 battleships are authorized to engage enemy targets at their discretion. Rules of engagement are simple. Protect Earth and her colonies by any means necessary. Admiral, said Captain Torres from the Relentless, these ships outgun us significantly. Are we expected to— Captain Torres, Harrison interrupted. I want you to remember something. These aliens have spent the last century conquering species that couldn't fight back effectively. They've become accustomed to easy victories. They've never faced human beings in combat. Sarah understood what he wasn't saying directly. Humanity's entire history was warfare. They'd spent millennia learning to kill things bigger, stronger, and more numerous than themselves. The battleships hadn't been designed to match alien technology. They'd been designed to overcome it. One more thing, Harrison added. Intelligence suggests the hegemony believes in the concept of honorable combat. They'll likely challenge us to formal battle rather than simply bombarding Earth from long range. Use that. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Captain, Rodriguez said quietly. Incoming transmission from the alien fleet. On screen, the display shimmered, then resolved into the image of what was unmistakably an alien commander. 4 arms, 6 eyes, scales that shifted color as Sarah watched. When he spoke, the universal translator rendered his words in crisp, authoritative English. I am Admiral Zektar of the Hegemony Third Fleet. You will identify yourself and prepare for formal surrender negotiations. Sarah stepped forward, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. First contact with a hostile alien species, and she got to speak for her entire world. I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. Our world does not surrender. Zektars. Mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Captain Chen, you command 1 small ship among a pitiful dozen. High Fleet could reduce your world to ash without effort. Surely you must see the logic in avoiding unnecessary bloodshed. The only bloodshed I'm concerned about, Sarah replied evenly, is yours. The alien admiral's eyes narrowed. You would risk the lives of billions for your pride? Admiral, you've clearly done your research on our species, so you know that threatening our world was the worst possible way to get us to cooperate. For a moment, Zektar said nothing. Then his scales shifted to what Sarah suspected was confusion. Your species has not developed faster than light travel. Your ships are primitive chemical propulsion craft, barely capable of reaching your own moon. What could you possibly do to threaten us? Sarah smiled, and she hoped it looked as dangerous as she felt. You're about to find out. She made a gesture and Rodriguez cut the transmission. Ma'am, Rodriguez said, the alien fleet is moving. They're forming some kind of battle formation. Good. Signal all ships. Operation Underdog is now in effect. Around Earth, 11 other battleships began moving into positions that would seem completely nonsensical to any observer familiar with traditional space combat. Instead of forming a defensive line or attempting to match the aliens' formation, they scattered seemingly at random. To the hegemony, it must have looked like panic. Sarah knew better. Each battleship was moving to a carefully calculated position, one that would allow them to demonstrate the fundamental difference between a species that conquered primitives and a species that had learned to survive by killing its predators. "Captain," Communications Officer Park called out, "I'm receiving a message from all battleships. They report ready for combat." Acknowledged. Sarah turned to her tactical officer. "Rodriguez, are our special packages ready?" "All weapons systems. Show green, Captain, including the ones that don't officially exist." Sarah nodded. The hegemony had studied human technology, but they'd only seen what humanity wanted them to see. The real weapons, the ones that had been developed in the deepest black projects, were about to make their debut. Signal to Fleet Command, Earth Defense Force is ready to engage. On the main display, the alien fleet completed its formation. 17. Massive ships arranged in a perfect battle line, their weapons charging with enough energy to level mountains. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was exactly what the human battleships had been designed to kill. "All ships," Sarah commanded, "weapons free. Show them what humans do to bullies." The battle for Earth was about to begin. Chapter 2. The Art of War. Admiral Zektar watched the human ships scatter across his display and felt a mixture of confusion and contempt. In 1,000 years of conquest, he had never seen such tactical incompetence. The humans were spreading their forces so thin that his fleet could destroy them one by one without any risk. "Tactical assessment," he commanded. "Sir," his tactical officer replied, scales bright with excitement. "The human ships have completely abandoned any coherent formation. They appear to be fleeing in different directions. Are they attempting to escape the system?" "Negative, Admiral. They're maintaining position relative to their homeworld, but their positioning makes no strategic sense. It's as if they've never studied basic space combat doctrine." Zektar's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. He had hoped for at least a token resistance to make the conquest interesting, but it seemed the humans were even more primitive than his intelligence reports suggested. "Very well. We'll destroy them individually. Signal the fleet. Advance by squadrons. Each squadron will engage the nearest human vessel." As his orders went out, Zektar settled back to watch what should be a brief, one-sided battle. The human ships were already outnumbered and outgunned. Now that they'd abandoned any chance of coordinating their defense, victory was assured. The first hegemony squadron moved toward the closest human battleship, the one whose captain had shown such ridiculous defiance. Indomitable, they called it, an ironic name for a ship about to be vaporized. "Squadron Leader Vector reports ready for engagement," his communications officer announced. "Tell him to disable their engines first. I want to question their leadership before we finish them." "Yes, Admiral." On the display, 3 hegemony vessels closed on the human battleship. At this range, their weapons could tear through any known armor like paper. The human ship seemed to realize its predicament. It was turning to face them, bringing its weapons to bear. How quaint. The humans intended to go down fighting. Zektar almost felt sorry for them. Then the human ship fired, and everything changed. Sarah watched the 3 alien ships approach and felt her heart hammering against her ribs. This was it. The moment that would determine whether Earth lived or died. Everything depended on the next few minutes. "Range to target?" she asked. 200,000 kilometers and closing, Rodriguez replied. "Their weapons are charging." Wait for it. The alien ships were beautiful as they approached, their hulls gleaming with that strange blue light. Sarah could see weapons ports opening along their sides like the gills of some deep-sea predator. Energy readings were climbing on her displays. Enough power to reduce Indomitable to its component atoms. "Captain," Park called out, voice tight with tension. "They're hailing us." "Put it through." A new alien face appeared on the screen, younger than Admiral Zektar, with brighter scales and fewer scars. "Human vessel, you will power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your destruction." Sarah looked at the alien officer for a long moment. Then she smiled. "Counteroffer," she said. "You turn around and run, and I won't demonstrate why your species should have stayed home." The alien's scales shifted to what Sarah was beginning to recognize as anger. "You are in no position to make threats, human. We outnumber you 3-1, and our ships are far superior to your primitive craft." "Are they?" Sarah asked. "Let's find out. Rodriguez?" "Aye, Captain. Firing solution Omega is locked and ready." "Fire." What happened next would be discussed in military academies for the next 1,000 years. The Indomitable didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, something that looked like a small, innocuous probe launched from its forward tube and began drifting toward the hegemony squadron. The alien squadron leader actually laughed. "What is that supposed to be, your surrender beacon?" The probe reached the halfway point between the fleets and quietly exploded. Except it wasn't an explosion in any conventional sense. Space itself seemed to hiccup, reality bending in ways that violated several fundamental laws of physics. The 3 hegemony ships, which had been charging their weapons for a devastating alpha strike, suddenly found themselves somewhere else entirely. They were still in the same solar system. They were still in the same approximate location, but they were also occupying the same space as a rather large asteroid that hadn't been there moments before. The collision happened too fast for the alien shields to compensate. 3 hegemony warships, each the size of a small city, became part of the asteroid belt in a spectacular display of physics meeting violent reality. "What the hell was that?" Rodriguez whispered. "Dimensional warfare," Sarah replied calmly. "We've been working on it for 10 years. Turns out that if you can fold space-time just right, you can put your enemies anywhere you want them to be. On the main display, the expanding debris cloud that had been 3 alien warships began to dim and fade. In the silence that followed, Sarah could almost hear the collective shock from the remaining 14 hegemony vessels. Her communications officer looked up from his station, eyes wide. "Captain, we're receiving urgent transmissions from the alien fleet. I think they want to talk." Admiral Zektar stared at his display in shock that went beyond mere surprise and entered the realm of existential crisis. 3 of his most powerful warships had simply ceased to exist, not destroyed in battle, not overwhelmed by enemy fire, but somehow moved into solid matter and eliminated before they could even react. "Tactical," he snapped. "What happened to Squadron 3? "Sir." His tactical officer's scales had gone, completely white, the color of mortal terror. "I don't know. One moment they were engaging the human ship, the next moment they were inside asteroid JX-471. It's as if space itself betrayed them." "That's impossible." "Yes, sir. Completely impossible. Which means the humans have developed technology that we don't understand." Zektar's 4 hands worked frantically at his controls, pulling up every piece of intelligence the hegemony had gathered about human technological development. "Chemical rockets," he read. "Basic orbital mechanics. Primitive nuclear power. Nothing that should allow for the casual manipulation of space-time. Unless... Communications," he ordered. "Get me the human captain. Now." The display shimmered, showing him the bridge of the human battleship. The captain, Chen, he remembered, stood calmly in the center of what appeared to be a rather cramped command center, filled with screens and blinking lights. It looked almost primitive compared to the flowing, organic interfaces of hegemony ships. But primitive tools in the hands of a master could be deadlier than advanced weapons wielded by amateurs. "Admiral," Captain Chen said politely, "I hope that demonstration was educational." "How?" Zektar demanded. "Your species has barely mastered interplanetary travel. How do you possess dimensional manipulation technology?" Chen's expression didn't change. "We've had faster-than-light travel for 15 years, Admiral. We just don't use it the way you do. We prefer to let potential enemies underestimate us." 15 years? But our intelligence clearly shows exactly what we wanted you to see," Chen interrupted. "Did you really think we'd be careless enough to let hostile aliens study our real capabilities?" Zektar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of conquest: genuine fear. If the humans had been hiding their true technological level, what else had they concealed? "What do you want?" he asked finally. Nothing complicated, Chen replied. Turn your fleet around and leave this system. Find some other species to terrorize. As I said before, Earth does not surrender. And if I refuse? Captain Chen's smile was back, and this time Zektar recognized it for what it was, the expression of a predator that had just cornered its prey. Then you'll discover what happens when you threaten a species that spent 10,000 years learning how to kill things bigger and stronger than we are. On his tactical display, the remaining human battleships were beginning to move, not toward his fleet, but into positions that formed a complex three-dimensional pattern around the hegemony ships. It looked almost like, by the void, his tactical officer whispered. They're surrounding us. 12 ships surrounding 17. It should have been impossible. But as Zektar watched, he began to understand the human formation. Each battleship was positioned to create overlapping fields of fire that would allow them to concentrate their attacks while preventing his larger fleet from bringing their numerical superiority to bear. Sir, his communications officer called out. We're receiving a transmission from the Hegemony High Command. They're demanding a status report. Zektar looked at the tactical display, where human ships moved with a precision that spoke of centuries of military doctrine refined through constant warfare. He thought about Squadron 3, now part of an asteroid belt. He considered the implications of facing an enemy that had deliberately concealed their capabilities while studying his. For the first time in his career, Admiral Zektar was faced with the possibility of defeat. Tell High Command, he said slowly, that we may have underestimated our opponents. Chapter 3. Revelations. The command chamber of the Dominion's edge had fallen into the kind of silence that precedes either surrender or desperate action. Admiral Zektar floated before his tactical displays, his 6 eyes taking in information that challenged everything he thought he knew about warfare, technology, and the nature of conquest itself. Sir, his tactical officer said quietly, the humans are hailing us again. On screen, Captain Chen appeared once more, but this time she wasn't alone. Behind her stood other figures, some in similar uniforms, others in civilian clothes. Zektar recognized the signs of a war council. Admiral, Chen said, I'm going to make this simple for you. You have 2 choices. Leave now or discover why every military academy in the galaxy should be studying human tactics instead of dismissing us as primitives. Captain Chen, Zektar, replied, forcing his voice to remain steady. You've demonstrated that your species possesses more advanced technology than our intelligence suggested. But you still face overwhelming odds. My fleet carries over 100,000 warriors. Even if your weapons are superior, simple mathematics, interrupted a new voice. Only work if you understand all the variables. The speaker stepped forward, an older human with gray hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. His uniform bore insignia that Zektar didn't recognize. Admiral Zektar, I'm Admiral Marcus Harrison, commander of Earth's defense fleet. I think it's time we had an honest conversation about what you're really facing here. Harrison moved to stand beside Chen, and something in his manner made Zektar's combat instincts scream warnings. This wasn't just another military officer. This was someone who had spent a lifetime learning how to kill efficiently. Your species, Harrison continued, has had great success conquering civilizations that couldn't fight back effectively. Agricultural societies, peaceful federations, species that had moved beyond warfare. You've gotten comfortable with easy victories. We have conquered 47 worlds, Zektar said with as much dignity as he could muster. Exactly. 47 worlds that couldn't defend themselves properly. You've never faced a species that spent its entire evolutionary history in constant warfare. Harrison gestured, and the display behind him changed to show images that made Zektar's scales shift to horrified yellow, battlefields that stretched beyond the horizon, weapons that could level cities, soldiers fighting in conditions that would kill most species within minutes. We've been at war with ourselves for 10,000 years, Harrison said conversationally. We've perfected the art of killing things that are bigger, stronger, more numerous, and more advanced than we are. We've learned to win battles we shouldn't be able to survive. These are historical records, Zektar protested. Your species has achieved peace. We've achieved the discipline not to kill each other, Chen corrected. There's a difference. All that experience, all those hard-learned lessons about warfare, we didn't forget them. We just found a better target. The display changed again, showing detailed schematics of human battleships. But these weren't the simple designs that Hegemony Intelligence had catalogued. These were machines of war that incorporated technologies Zektar didn't even recognize. Each of our battleships, Harrison explained, carries weapon systems derived from 10 millennia of military innovation. We didn't build them to match alien technology. We built them to overcome it. Impossible, Zektar's tactical officer whispered. No species could develop such advanced systems without us detecting them. Harrison smiled, and the expression was somehow more terrifying than any weapon. You were looking for energy signatures, communication patterns, industrial infrastructure. All the things that civilizations use when they're trying to impress their neighbors. We built everything underground, Chen added. In deep space installations that don't show up on conventional sensors, in dimensions slightly adjacent to normal space-time. We've been preparing for this confrontation for 15 years. Zektar felt the foundations of his worldview crumbling. The hegemony's entire military doctrine was based on technological superiority and overwhelming force. But if the humans had been deliberately concealing advanced technology, "What do you want?" he asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Nothing," Harrison replied. "We don't want your territory, your resources, or your submission. We just want you to leave us alone." "And if we refuse?" The two human commanders exchanged a look that spoke volumes about shared experience and mutual understanding. "Then you'll discover," Chen said quietly, "why the most dangerous predators in nature are usually smaller than their prey." In the depths of space, the 12 human battleships completed their positioning. To Zektar's experienced eye, the formation looked impossibly complex, a three-dimensional maze of overlapping fields of fire that seemed to violate basic principles of fleet tactics. Then he realized what he was looking at. "By the void," he whispered. "It's not a battle formation." "Sir?" his tactical officer asked. "It's a trap. They've turned the entire engagement zone into a killing field." On his displays, targeting solutions began appearing faster than his computers could process them. Every possible move his fleet could make had already been anticipated, countered, and turned into a disadvantage. The humans hadn't just positioned their ships randomly. They'd created a situation where the hegemony's numerical superiority became a liability. His larger ships couldn't maneuver without exposing their flanks to crossfire. His weapons couldn't target the human vessels without risking friendly fire. His formation couldn't advance without bunching up into an even more vulnerable configuration. Worst of all, the humans were still broadcasting their conversation on open channels. Every ship in his fleet could hear their admiral calmly explaining how thoroughly they'd been outmaneuvered. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "I'm receiving urgent messages from our squadron commanders. They're requesting new orders." Zektar looked at his tactical display one more time. 17 ships, the pride of the hegemony Third Fleet, trapped in a formation that had been turned against them by an enemy they'd underestimated catastrophically. For the first time in his career, Admiral Zektar was about to give an order he'd never imagined he would need to speak. But before he could, something else happened that changed everything. "Sir!" his sensor officer shouted, scales flashing urgent red. "New contacts, multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Human reinforcements?" "Negative, sir. The energy signatures are..." "Admiral, I think it's a hegemony fleet, a big one." On the main display, space twisted and tore as dozens of new ships emerged from hyperspace. Not the elegant curves of human battleships or even the organic forms of Zektar's fleet, but something else entirely. Something that made both human and hegemony ships look primitive by comparison. "Admiral," the communications officer whispered, "we're receiving a transmission from the new arrivals. They're claiming to be the hegemony First Fleet." Zektar's blood turned to ice. The First Fleet was commanded by Supreme Admiral Thurvok himself, the most brilliant military mind in hegemony history, and the being personally responsible for half of their conquests. If Thurvok was here, it meant the High Command had decided that Earth represented a threat serious enough to warrant their personal attention. Captain Chen's image flickered back onto the display, but now her expression had changed from confident to grimly determined. "Admiral Zektar," she said, "I think we're all about to discover what happens when humans face impossible odds." The battle for Earth was about to become something far more complex than anyone had anticipated. Chapter 4. The true test Supreme Admiral Thurvok had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. He had commanded fleets that turned entire star systems into graveyards. In his 800 years of life, he had never met an enemy that could stand against the full might of the hegemony. But as his first fleet emerged from hyperspace to find Zektar's forces trapped in what appeared to be an impossible tactical situation, Thurvok began to suspect that Earth would be different. "Status report," he commanded from the bridge of his flagship, Eternal Dominion. The massive vessel dwarfed even Zektar's command ship, its hull black as the void between stars, and bristling with weapons that could crack planets. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "Admiral Zektar's fleet appears to be contained by the human defensive forces." "Contained by 12 primitive vessels?" "Yes, sir. The humans have created some kind of formation that prevents our forces from maneuvering effectively. And, sir, they've already destroyed 3 of Admiral Zektar's ships." Thurvok's 8 eyes focused on the tactical display with the intensity of a predator evaluating prey. What he saw challenged every assumption he'd made about human military capabilities. The 12 human battleships had positioned themselves in a complex 3-dimensional matrix that turned the space around Earth into a tactical nightmare for conventional fleet tactics. But more than that, their movements showed a level of coordination and strategic thinking that spoke of centuries of military evolution. "Analysis," he ordered. "Sir, the human formation appears to be based on principles we don't recognize. They're not trying to match our firepower or numbers. Instead, they've created a situation where our advantages become disadvantages." "Explain." "Our ships are larger and more powerful, but in this formation, size becomes a liability. We can't maneuver without exposing critical systems. Our numerical superiority is negated because we can't concentrate our forces without creating targets for their weapons. It's as if they've studied our tactics for years and designed specific counters." Thurvok was quiet for a long moment. In his centuries of conquest, he had faced desperate last stands, brilliant defensive strategies, and innovative technologies. But he had never faced an enemy that seemed to understand hegemony tactics better than the hegemony itself. "Open a channel to the human fleet," he ordered. The main display shifted to show the bridge of what appeared to be the human flagship. 2 figures stood in the center, the captain he'd been briefed about, and an older human who carried himself with the bearing of a supreme commander. "I am Supreme Admiral Thurvok of the Hegemony First Fleet," he announced. "You will identify yourselves and explain your hostile actions against hegemony forces." The older human stepped forward. "Admiral Harrison, Earth Defense Fleet. Our actions are hardly hostile, Supreme Admiral. We're defending our homeworld against an unprovoked invasion. Admiral Zektar was conducting routine expansion operations. Your world falls within hegemony territorial claims." "Territorial claims?" Captain Chen moved to stand beside Harrison, and Thurvok noted how the 2 humans positioned themselves, not side by side like equals, but in a formation that allowed them to support each other while maintaining independent fields of action. Even their body language spoke of military sophistication. "Supreme Admiral," Harrison said calmly, "let me be clear about our position. Earth has never recognized hegemony territorial claims. We've been aware of your expansion for decades, and we've been preparing accordingly." Thurvok's mandibles clicked with what might have been amusement. "Preparing? Admiral Harrison, I command 47 vessels, each more advanced than anything in your fleet. Combined with Admiral Zektar's remaining forces, you face odds of nearly 5 to 1. What preparation could possibly—" "The same preparation Harrison interrupted. That allowed us to trap Admiral Zektar's fleet and destroy 3 of his ships without losing a single vessel of our own. For the first time in centuries, Thurvok felt something approaching uncertainty. He had reviewed the tactical data from Zektar's engagement, and what the humans had accomplished shouldn't have been possible with their reported technology level. You used some form of dimensional manipulation, Thurvok said. Impressive, but hardly decisive against a fleet of this size. That was just one weapon system, Chen replied. We have others. Such as? Harrison smiled, and the expression reminded Thurvok uncomfortably of the apex predators on his homeworld. Supreme Admiral, how much do you know about human military? History? Your species has a documented history of warfare. Primitive by galactic standards, but extensive. 10,000 years of continuous conflict, Harrison said conversationally. We've fought wars with everything from sharpened sticks to weapons that could sterilize continents. We've learned to win battles against superior numbers, better technology, and more powerful enemies. Ancient history is irrelevant to modern warfare, is it? Chen asked. She gestured, and the display behind her changed to show detailed specifications of human battleships. Every weapon system on our ships is based on lessons learned from that history. We didn't just build warships, we built the ultimate expression of 10 millennia of military evolution. Thurvok studied the schematics, his tactical mind analyzing what he saw. The human ships were indeed more advanced than initial intelligence had suggested, but they were still outnumbered and outgunned. Impressive, he admitted, but ultimately insufficient. You face the combined might of 2 hegemony fleets. Even with advanced technology, you cannot hope to. Supreme Admiral, Harrison interrupted again. You're making the same mistake Admiral Zektar made. You're assuming we're trying to fight you the way you expect to be fought. Before Thurvok could respond, his sensor officer called out in alarm. Sir, energy readings are spiking across the human fleet. They're powering up weapon systems I don't recognize. On the tactical display, the 12 human battleships began to change. Hull plates shifted, revealing weapon ports that hadn't been visible before. Energy signatures climbed to levels that shouldn't have been possible for ships of their size. But more disturbing than the weapons themselves was how the humans were deploying them. Instead of targeting the nearest enemy ships, they were aiming at apparently empty space between the 2 fleets. What are they targeting? Thurvok demanded. Unknown, sir. They appear to be firing at nothing. The human weapons fired, but instead of energy beams or projectiles, they launched something that looked like metallic seeds. Dozens of them spreading out in a precise pattern that encompassed the entire engagement zone. For a moment, nothing happened. Then space itself began to change. Captain Chen watched the tactical display as Operation Prometheus went into effect. Around her bridge, her crew worked with the calm efficiency of people who had trained for this moment for years. Deployment successful, Rodriguez reported. All nodes are active and synchronized. Excellent. Signal to fleet. Phase 2 authorized. On the main display, the space between Earth's battleships and the combined hegemony fleets was beginning to shimmer. Reality itself seemed to flex and bend as the deployed nodes activated. Captain, Admiral Harrison said from the command channel, your people have outdone themselves. I've never seen anything like this. Thank you, sir. Dr. Reeves always said that the best weapons are the ones your enemy doesn't understand until it's too late. Supreme Admiral Thurvok's image flickered. Back onto the display, his scales now showing signs of genuine concern. What have you done? We've changed the rules, Chen replied simply. Supreme Admiral, your fleets are now operating in a localized region of space-time that we control. Every physical law, every tactical assumption, every strategic principle you've relied on for centuries, all of them are now subject to our discretion. To demonstrate her point, she nodded to Rodriguez. One of the hegemony ships, a massive cruiser from Thurvok's fleet, suddenly found itself moving backward despite its engines pushing it forward. Its weapons, which had been charging for a decisive strike, began firing at random intervals in directions that had nothing to do with where they were aimed. Impossible, Thurvok whispered. You cannot simply alter the laws of physics. We can't alter them, Harrison said, appearing beside Chen, on the display. But we can create localized regions where different laws apply. Think of it as a pocket universe where we write the rules. Chen pulled up a new display showing the tactical situation from a broader perspective. The space around Earth now appeared as a bubble of altered reality, with the human battleships positioned at key nodes that allowed them to control every aspect of the engagement zone. Your ships are faster than ours under normal circumstances, she explained. So we've created a region where speed is determined by our weapon systems rather than your engines. Your weapons are more powerful than ours in standard space-time. Here, weapon effectiveness is tied to variables we control. You're cheating, Thurvok said, but his tone suggested professional admiration as much as outrage. We're winning, Chen corrected. There's a difference. On the tactical display, the combined hegemony fleets found themselves increasingly unable to function as their crews expected. Ships that tried to accelerate found themselves slowing down. Weapons that fired forward sent their energy backward. Communication systems began broadcasting random data instead of orders. But Chen wasn't finished. Rodriguez, activate the historical protocols. Aye, Captain. Which era? Chen considered her options. The human battleships carried weapon systems based on every major military innovation in their species' history, from ancient siege engines to theoretical weapons that wouldn't be invented for another century. Let's start with something they'll recognize. Medieval siege warfare, scaled up for space combat. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come. The space around the hegemony fleet suddenly filled with what appeared to be massive catapults and trebuchets, each one the size of a battleship and constructed from pure energy. They began hurling projectiles that followed ballistic trajectories despite being in zero gravity, arcing over and around the alien ship's shields to strike with devastating precision. What are those? Thurvok demanded. History lessons, Chen replied. Every human military innovation adapted for space warfare. We have 10,000 years of battlefield experience to draw from. The energy siege engines were replaced by formations of what looked like ancient Greek phalanxes, except each soldier was the size of a fighter craft and their spears were coherent energy beams. They advanced in perfect formation, their shields overlapping to create an impenetrable wall that pushed steadily toward the alien fleets. This is madness, Thurvok said, but Chen could hear the fascination in his voice. You're applying ancient tactics to space combat. Ancient tactics refined by centuries of experience, Harrison corrected. Strategies that worked on Earth will work anywhere, Supreme Admiral. The principles of warfare don't change just because the battlefield moves to space. The phalanx formations dissolved, replaced by what appeared to be Roman legions complete with siege towers that rolled through space toward the alien ships. Each tower bristled with weapons that fired in coordinated volleys, turning the engagement zone into a three-dimensional recreation of history's greatest military innovations. But Chen was just getting started. Rodriguez, let's show them something more recent. World War II, Pacific Theater. The space around Earth transformed into what looked like the largest naval battle in human history. Carrier groups materialized around each human battleship, launching waves of fighter craft that swarmed toward the hegemony fleets in coordinated attack patterns. Except these weren't normal fighters. Each one was constructed from pure energy and guided by artificial intelligence based on the greatest human military tacticians in history. They attacked with the precision of machines and the creativity of human genius. Torpedo bombers incoming, Chen announced as waves of energy aircraft dove toward the alien ships. Each torpedo is programmed with the tactical knowledge of every successful naval attack in human history. The hegemony fleets designed to fight other spacefaring civilizations found themselves completely unprepared for weapons and tactics that had evolved in an entirely different environment. Their shields, calibrated to stop energy weapons and kinetic projectiles, struggled to cope with attacks that followed principles of physics that didn't exist anywhere else in the galaxy. Captain, Communications Officer Park called out, I'm receiving surrender requests from multiple hegemony vessels. Chen looked at the tactical display, where nearly 60 alien warships were trapped in a pocket of space-time that operated according to human rules. They were powerful, advanced, and completely helpless against an enemy that fought wars they didn't understand. Signal to all hegemony ships, she ordered. Surrender will be accepted, but only unconditionally. Power down all weapons, and prepare to be escorted out of the system. Supreme Admiral Thurvok's image appeared one final time on the display. His scales had shifted to colors Chen didn't recognize, but his posture spoke of a warrior who had finally met his match. "Captain Chen," he said formally, "I must ask. If your species possesses such advanced military capabilities, why have you remained hidden?" Chen considered her answer carefully. "Because, Supreme Admiral, the greatest victory is the one you never have to fight. We hoped that by remaining hidden, we could avoid exactly this situation. And now the galaxy knows that Earth is defended. The question is, what happens next?" Thurvok was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of someone whose entire worldview had been fundamentally altered. "Captain, I have spent 8 centuries conquering worlds. I have never before encountered a species that could turn warfare itself into a weapon. Is that surrender?" "That," Thurvok said with something that might have been respect, "is a request for negotiation." Epilogue. New rules, 6 months after. The battle for Earth. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of Orbital Station Unity, watching as the first joint human hegemony research vessel prepared for its maiden voyage. The ship was a testament to what could be accomplished when 2 species decided to build together instead of destroy each other. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Admiral Harrison joined her at the observation window, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Just thinking about how different things might have been," Sarah replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. "If Thurvok had been as stubborn as Zektar, the galaxy would be dealing with a very different situation right now." Harrison agreed. "Though I have to admit, I'm still surprised by how quickly the hegemony adapted to the new reality." Through the window, they could see hegemony engineers working alongside human technicians, their forearms making them remarkably efficient at the complex assembly work required for dimensional drive systems. The sight would have been unthinkable just months earlier. "They're a military civilization," Sarah said. "They understand the concept of strategic adaptation." Once Thurvok realized that we weren't interested in conquest, that we genuinely just wanted to be left alone, he made the logical choice. "Speaking of logical choices," Harrison said, "have you given any more thought to the Admiral's proposal?" Sarah smiled. Supreme Admiral Thurvok had offered her command of the new joint fleet, being established to patrol the galaxy's outer regions. It was a position that would have been impossible for a human to achieve through conventional means, but then again, nothing about first contact with the hegemony had been conventional. "I'm still considering it," she replied. "Though I have to admit, the idea of exploring uncharted regions with a fleet that includes both our battleships and their technology is tempting. The Exploration Council is hoping you'll accept. Having someone with your tactical experience commanding the joint fleet would go a long way toward establishing credibility with the other species we're likely to encounter." Sarah nodded. The galaxy, it turned out, was far more crowded than either humans or the hegemony had realized. There were dozens of civilizations in the local galactic region, most of them carefully avoiding contact with the hegemony out of well-founded fear. The revelation that Earth had not only survived first contact but had fundamentally altered the balance of power in the region was causing ripple effects that were still being felt. "Captain Chen to the Communications Center," came an announcement over the station's internal speakers. "Priority message from the Hegemony High Command." Sarah and Harrison exchanged glances. The High Command rarely communicated directly with individual human officers, preferring to work through established diplomatic channels. They made their way to the Communications Center, where the duty officer was waiting with a somewhat puzzled expression. "Captain," he said, "you're not going to believe who wants to speak with you." The main display activated, showing a figure that Sarah recognized from intelligence briefings but had never expected to see in person. Grand Admiral Nexus, Supreme, commander of all hegemony forces and the being personally responsible for their expansion across the galaxy. "Captain Chen," Nexus said without preamble, "I have a proposition for you. I'm listening. Our long-range scouts have detected something in the Outer Rim territories. something that poses a potential threat to both our civilizations. Sarah felt her tactical instincts sharpen. What kind of threat? The kind that requires the combined resources of species that understand advanced warfare, Nexus replied. Captain, how would you feel about commanding the largest joint military operation in galactic history? Sarah looked at Harrison, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Whatever was coming, they would face it the same way they had faced the hegemony. Together, with the combined wisdom of 10,000 years of human military experience and the advanced technology of a galactic civilization. Grand Admiral, she said, when do we start? 3 weeks later, the first joint human hegemony battle fleet departed Earth's solar system, carrying 12 human battleships, 37 hegemony vessels, and weapons systems that combined the tactical brilliance of human warfare with the advanced technology of a galactic empire. What they found in the Outer Rim would test everything both species had learned about cooperation, conflict, and the true meaning of strength. But that, as they say, is another story.